all the settling in, finding your spot.
I'll try to be still. I'm pretty animated though when I talk, so
Good. Do it. Don't feel like you have
wherever it goes.
Yeah, totally. I mean, whatever helps you to, we have a lot of these and, people talk with different things or like tap their feet and, it's just how we operate like as humans. So feel free to feel like yourself. So, yeah. Welcome to In the Act, a program on process in the creative life. Creativity does not just start and stop with artists. We all make aesthetic or guiding decisions in our lives. Our aim is to talk through the process and investigate how we choose to express ourselves and live creatively. We're connecting with people about their lives. That is the subject of our show. Broadcasting from the studio in Mead Public Library in Sheboygan, Wisconsin, I'm Erica Hunsinger, and this is In the Act. And today's guest on In the Act is Dorothy McElroy. Hi, Dorothy.
Hi, Erica.
Thank you so much for being on. I wanted to, can I just name some of the credentials that you have under your name for a minute?
Please. Yes.
Okay. So president of Worldwide Dragon Shooting Day Incorporated, head grief and archery instructor at the Dancing Arrow Club, grief therapy through archery, certified grief support specialist, end-of-life doula, and level 2 archery instructor.
That about encapsulates it.
I mean, you're so much more than that, but those are such huge pieces about yourself, and that's where the most of your passion and energy goes to, besides your son as well and for yourself. But I was wondering if you would like to talk a little bit about how the origin story about it. How did you get to where you're at right now?
Sure. First off, thank you very much for having us come on. This is a great opportunity, and we love sharing our story.
I'm so glad. Yeah, thank you.
I say we because whenever I talk, I'm always talking on behalf of myself and my son, Wyatt.
Yeah.
And this started from his dream 9 years ago. So 9 years ago, March 13th, my husband passed away from a cerebral hemorrhage. So it was unexpected. It was suddenly. Dennis my husband used to be one of the original artists for Dungeons and Dragons.
Wow.
So he came on early on. He was a sculptor for them. He was a artist in form of paper sculpting, clay sculpting, model making, cartography, whatever the artist needed a sample of. They would come to him and say, "Hey, can I have this type of X-ray, blah, blah, blah." Then he would just prototype it for him, and then they would use it to draw. They would paint off of his sculptures or models out.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
So one of the big things he loved doing was dragons. Now, Dennis and Wyatt started shooting archery when Wyatt was 3, going on 4.
Wow.
So in Wyatt's mind, when he went to a grief camp a few months after his dad died, they said, if you can have a holiday to honor your dad, what would you do? He goes, well, I would want Daddy Dragon Day, and I would want thousands of archers to slay dragons in honor of Dad. He goes, and Dad liked to give money to other people and charities, so why don't we give money to other kids who've lost their parents?
Wow.
And it was, the kids go, yeah, but that's a dream, and dreams never come true. If it did, our parents wouldn't be dead.
Sure.
And this is, these are kids from the ages of 5 up to 16.
Sure.
So this is how he was thinking. This is how he was, handling this. And I'm like, I really like how that sounds. Why don't we see what we can do?
Right.
So on the first year anniversary of my husband's death, we had the first Dennis Kauth Memorial Dragon Shoot. We raised $875 for his grief camp. We had 116 archers slay dragons in Kenosha.
So what does that look like? What does that mean when you're saying that you have this? What does it look like?
Okay, so a dragon shoot, what a dragon shoot is we have people. So it would be a club, so an archery club, or schools, or church groups Girl Scouts, whoever.
Yeah.
We would go to them and say, hey, we're having a benefit archery shoot
Okay.
for this person because they lost their mom or dad. They're fighting cancer. They were in a bad car accident. Can you help us draw dragons? So for the first event, we went to Wyatt's school. So Wyatt was in second grade. So third grade when we had the first event. I went to the principal and said, can we have a dragon drawing contest?
Wow.
Can we see how many targets we can get? And this is what we're going to do.
Right.
And the money was actually, the second year, because of that, the money was actually raised for somebody at his school, a little girl who was fighting leukemia.
Wow.
But we had, so we had over 30 dragons we had to scale down to, we chose the top 10. And then we went to a local printer, and the printer said, we'll donate all these targets for you, so you can keep more money for, your cause. And then we have archers come. This was an indoor event because it was in March.
Okay.
So everyone grabbed their favorite target. You pay for it ahead of time.
Okay.
They put their target up, and then
Which
everyone
is the dragon.
which is a dragon. So everyone had a different dragon to slay.
Okay.
And this is the uniqueness of this, is that in real life, everyone has a dragon to slay.
Sure.
Ours is grief. So our dragon represents the sadness and all the different emotions that went along with that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it can take any form. It could be a child who's in foster care. It could be a child who's lost a parent, living with grandparents. They're going through a divorce. It can be addiction for some people. It can be PTSD. I mean, it fits anything.
Right.
But with the dragon shoot, we were happy doing just one. We really were. We're like, we did it. They said it couldn't be done.
And you did it.
But
right.
At this time, I was already a week, I guess I should back up a little bit. A week after my husband died, Wyatt and I went to an open to the public archery event. And it was, anybody can come. You don't have to belong to the club.
Yeah.
And I took my husband's bow. Never held a bow before.
Wow.
Didn't know if I could pull it back.
Wow.
Wyatt was very comfortable in his skin and holding a bow.
Right.
And he had a dragon necklace around his neck that had his dad's ashes in it.
Wow.
So and people at archery clubs they're very, very friendly.
Yeah.
I've yet to meet somebody who does not go out of their way to help you with your equipment or to offer suggestions or, how you doing? Where have you shot before?
Lovely culture.
Yeah, it's just so, it's very, very cool. So these gentlemen, Wyatt's hitting the bullseye every time. I'm hitting the ceiling, I'm hitting the floor, hoping not hitting anybody else. And they say, why are you shooting so well? You're really doing good. How long have you shot? And so much like a kid, he just held his necklace out and he goes, well, my dad has helped me guide my arrows. Allow me to introduce you to Dennis. He died yesterday. Wow. This is a child's mind.
Sure.
And they look at me and I'm like, I actually died a week ago. Well, what are you doing here now? Living?
Right. Yeah.
Surviving? This is what we're doing here now.
Right. Wow.
So it's
that's a profound experience. And I'm very sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
And the transformation within that week of like having that amulet and to have Wyatt say that in response and to like my dad's guiding my arrows is a pretty profound thing. But then you feeling like you have to justify like your experience of being there is another level of your own process of grief then too, of having to explain what tools are going to be okay for you and your family moving forward.
It was quite a few months after that when we went to our actual first grief meeting.
Yeah.
And I was really surprised at the experiences of other families that have lost somebody. So there were several families who stopped celebrating everything. They weren't celebrating Christmas. They weren't celebrating birthdays anymore. They weren't, because they're so wrapped up in their grief.
Sure.
I didn't want grief to consume us.
Yeah.
I wanted it to define us, because if it consumed us, we'd stop growing, and life is all about growing.
Yeah.
You know, I've got a
Right.
7-year-old. I don't want him to say, this is the worst experience of my life, and I'm going to be afraid of whoever's going to die next.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, you can't let it consume you. You really have to. And everyone handles it differently. I just handled it. I let a 7-year-old guide me and say, what do you need? And how can we help do this journey?
I mean, that is just beautiful, Dorothy. Like that takes a lot of openness and flexibility on your side as a parent who's also grieving your husband to have this relationship and want to have the instinct to forge your path this way together. That's amazing.
Well, thank you. I think I learned it from experience. So my mom was 17 when I died, and I was not called to the hospital to say goodbye. So I did not want that to happen to Wyatt. I wanted this to be a positive experience for him.
Right.
So I gave him the options, and I gave him, what do you want to do? You know, there's not an option of sitting home. Let's do something to help other people.
Right.
So archery became, the bowstring became the invisible string for the connection to Wyatt and his dad, and archery became our lifeline. We threw ourselves into it.
Wow.
You do what you have to do in the time of whatever you're facing at the moment. And I'm sure everyone out there who's listening has been in that position at one point in time or another.
Yeah.
You know, there's no right way or wrong way to handle, grief or bereavement or how do I fix this situation?
Right.
You do the best that you can at the time that you're doing it.
Right. And I think some people also think that there's the stages of grief that go in order and that there are these set ways in which you, that's not true either. It's different for each person.
It is. There's a huge misconception with people think that when kids lose somebody when they're very young, that it gets easier as they get older.
Right.
And in actuality, it gets harder as they get older because you have those monumental steps of high school graduation, getting married, getting your first driver's license, your first shave if you're a young man.
Sure.
Your first date.
Right. All of the absences.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you don't remember, the voice anymore. You don't remember the smell anymore.
Absolutely. Right.
So, yeah.
And to use the analogy of the string of the bow as the connection between is really profound.
You do what you have to do.
Yeah.
Or try to do what you have to do.
Right. Well, thank you for sharing about the origins of this and how impactful. That's a silly word. Doesn't really give credence to the weight of how to negotiate this, and that it's not over, right? I think that when you said that it gets harder, those anniversaries are harder, the absences, and then how do you reconnect and reestablish and keep growing? And that's really, boy, that's tricky. That's so tricky.
It is. You know what? It's like surfing. Grief is a lot like surfing. You don't know what wave is going to hit you. You don't know when the wave is going to come, and you don't know when there's going to be calm waters. And it has been analogized to be a tsunami at times. Yeah. And then other times it's like, a tank 10 and just take it easy and let's ride this one out and just see where it's going to take us. And then it's going to eventually take us to calmer waters. Right. And then you can start paddling out instead of, fighting the waves coming back in. Right. And it's an interesting journey. It's one that everyone says it's going to get better with time. And that can be yes and no. Yeah. Because it depends on where do you want to go with it? Do you want to walk with grief hand in hand? Or do you want to hold it, push it away its arm length because you're afraid of what you're going to learn about yourself because of it? Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And it depends on where you are in your life and
how the person died as well. I mean, this was a shock to your family. That's different than, it's a different grief, I think, than an illness or something. Yeah. So there's multi-levels, multifaceted. I love the surfing analogy because of sitting in Sheboygan and being the surf capital of the Midwest. and just thinking about, the analogy of, we're mostly made up of water and the ebb and flow of life and these cycles of life and even just the days and how we wake up differently and how we respond and reflect. So, yeah. So after it was the first anniversary, you did your first experience with the dragon shooting.
Mm-hmm.
What happened to nudge it into the next level of, hey, we could maybe do this again?
So on social media, I had a lot of friends, acquaintances, all over the world, just from following different archers and learning different techniques and watching people who've been doing this for a long time. And so I posted pictures that night and said, you know what? This was so much fun. We laughed, we cried, we met so many new people. We made such an impact. And we came up with 2 slogans that night that have been our taglines for now on. And it's, we impact the world one arrow at a time.
Wow.
And dream big, shoot straight, name small. So dream big is everyone, because, said dreams don't come true. Mm-hmm. Shoot straight, because in archery, you want to be able to shoot straight and you can't, go curving or anything. And aim small is you always want to aim for that center target. But we do aim to impact the world one arrow at a time. But so the people I met, they saw these pictures and I was just exhausted. We went to bed and the next morning I woke up and I had over 250 messages.
Wow.
Wait a minute. Where'd you do this? How'd you do it? When's the next one? We want to do one too. And then I was approached by 2 individuals from Malta, and said, wait, we want to do this. We want to help you do this next year for us here. And then I had a message from somebody I knew in Greece, another one from Poland, another one from Hungary, another one from Uruguay, and then there's one from Ireland. They were just coming at me from all over the, and then different states. So knew somebody who is in New York, and then somebody from Michigan, and then somebody from California. And they're like, wait a minute, this can't be just one and done.
Right.
You have to make this bigger.
Wow.
So the next year it grew to 20 states. I think we had 25 countries, and we had over 3,000 archers.
Oh my gosh.
So our main goal is that anybody who holds a dragon shoot, and anybody can hold a dragon shoot, you need the money that's raised, has to stay in the community that the shoot is in. So it's not only about building community spirit, it's about getting behind somebody and raising them up and supporting them in the community. So it's a different type of nonprofit. A lot of nonprofits raise all the money from themselves and then they distribute it to whoever they feel that needs to go. You have a vote, you have a direction, you have a say. This is what we want to do. Can we do this?
Wow.
And we help them do that.
That's great. That's wonderful.
Different.
Yeah. Welcome back to In the Act. I'm Erica Hunsinger. We're here with Dorothy McElroy and talking about the worldwide Dragon Shoot Day, but how it's expanded. So when you're talking about the process of how that happens, do you then have to fly to Malta to do it and help support that community? Or it's just a template that you teach them and talk to them about and that they do it themselves?
I wish we were independently wealthy enough to be able to fly all over the world.
Right.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, right?
That would be pretty cool. Unfortunately, we have to do it via phone and via internet.
Sure.
So if somebody were to reach out, so now this was started 9 years ago, and June will mark 1 year that we become a nonprofit.
Great.
So in order to hold one, people reach out to us and say, we want to hold one.
Okay.
And we'll say, okay, who do you want to raise the money for? So all money we raise stays in the community that is holding the shoot. Okay.
Okay.
And we want to make sure that our mission is accomplished. So we will have a say in, yes, that's perfect. Go ahead and do that. Or, let's reconsider. And what about if we do this instead of this? Let's try to raise money for an individual or a family versus a large corporation.
Sure.
And then we send them ideas for targets. We send them the artwork. We usually send them arrow necklaces. So our motto is, thank you for being a dragon slayer. We impact the world one arrow at a time. Here's your arrow. Thank you so much for being part of that impactful, person.
Sure.
And here's a reminder that you're not only shooting for yourself, but you're shooting for someone else.
Yeah.
When you're slaying a dragon, you're holding the bow sometimes for those who cannot, and you're shooting the arrows for them.
Wow.
Let's do this together.
Wow. That's so beautiful. And then when they have the amulet, they can hold it and think about it.
Right.
And so it's this physical re-engagement object that allows for reflection on the act of doing the dragon shooting, which seems like it has a lot of joy to it, and physicality and support and enthusiasm, and then to the person it's being raised for.
Right.
And I guess I was under the impression that it was for only people who have died, and you've really expanded this beyond just for people experiencing death, but for all sorts of different challenges that we face, navigations.
Right. Grief is not just about loss or the death of a loved one. Grief is anything that is stopping you from growth, stopping you from living the life that, the full potential of life that you want to be able to live.
Ooh, that's a big one. And how does that apply to people?
Everyone's grief is different. So
Right.
Grief and bereavement are they're two different things almost.
They're like hand in hand, but different.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Can you break that down for us a little bit?
So
Me?
grief is anything that, and there's going to be people out there that don't agree with me, and that's awesome because not anybody is perfect. Grief is that something that we're missing in our lives that we want back because it's stopping us from being the person who we used to be because we're missing someone or we're missing something. Okay.
Yeah.
So the grief of an 8-year-old who lost their dad to a cerebral hemorrhage versus the grief of an 8-year-old whose mom and dad are divorced and can only see their dad every few weeks are totally different, but the impactfulness is the same.
Interesting. Right.
Because it hurts.
Yes.
And they can't get back what they used to do.
Right.
As a widow, there's a saying called it's your second first. So the first time you have your birthday without your spouse. It's the first time you're having it for the second or third or whatever number it is.
Right.
It's the second time you're doing this, but the first time alone. You're second first. And it's the same with kids.
Sure.
Bereavement really is, it's the process of mourning, and it's the feeling of, how am I going to get through doing this without you?
Okay. Yeah.
So and the big thing with archery is, if anybody's ever shot archery, and that's why I do the Dancing Arrow Club, is archery takes a lot of focus, and it takes a lot of muscle memory.
Yeah.
Repetition builds success.
True.
And in grief, repetition can build stamina, it can build growth, and it can build new things.
Yeah.
It sounds a little odd to say that, but it can, because it's not the repetition of, I'm constantly missing this person and I can't do anything without them.
Right.
It's the repetition of, I can do this and I will do this.
Yeah.
And I want to do this.
Right.
You know?
And that consistency, I think, is so helpful in providing structure for something that's so abstract and that doesn't have a linear life to it. That like the waves, you never know when the tsunami or the so that provides a stable ground and to engage and re-engage and know how to do it successfully every time. And that repetition is a safe place then, as I think of it in that way. So what's the Arrow group again? What did you call it?
Dancing Arrow Club.
The Dancing Arrow Club. And so is this an offshoot of that, or was this? Can you talk a little bit about the Dancing?
So Worldwide Dragon Shooting Day, and we shortened as WWDSD.
WWDSD.
Yeah.
Okay.
Shorter version of it. So the Dancing Arrow Club really was something that I devised and came up out of necessity for Wyatt and I. Yeah. And this is how we grieve. We grieve down the arrow. So when you're shooting, we shoot instinctively. There's a difference between instinctive, which is a longbow and a recurve bow, versus
a longbow or a recurved bow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Versus a compound bow.
Okay.
Okay. Compound bow has wheels on it. A longbow and a recurve bow look like they're called stick bows a lot of times.
Okay.
So when you shoot instinctively, you need to keep both eyes open. You need to look down the arrow with both eyes.
Okay.
To your target.
Okay.
Compound shooters, they look through one eye only, through a peep, to look at their target. Mostly
hunters use compound bows. Is that correct?
And professional target shooters. Yes.
Okay.
So what's metaphorically really cool about traditional is you have to keep both eyes open.
Interesting.
And in life, you got to keep both eyes open.
Right.
Your peripheral vision is everything.
Yes.
So Dancing Arrow is, if you ever saw an arrow being shot in slow motion, it dances.
Right. Yeah.
It's constantly moving.
Yeah.
And that's what you do with your grief and your emotions. It's constantly moving. You know, you have to be able to be vulnerable in order to grow.
Yeah.
And, the arrow's got to dance in order to hit its mark. And sometimes we have to do that too.
Wow. Oof. Yeah. That's beautiful. I love that. That's such a great...
It's different. A lot of people really can't grasp what we're trying to do, and that's okay.
Yeah. And how do you explain it to them differently then?
Actually, I don't think I explain anything the same way every time I talk about it.
Right. Yeah. Right.
So if you call me up tomorrow and say, hey, let's redo this, I'm going to have a totally different answer for you.
Sure. Yeah. Which is great. Yeah.
Because that's just how it is. It is... How do you explain what your life has become since you've been impacted a certain way?
Absolutely. Right.
So I was doing something totally different before my husband died.
What were you doing?
I was doing different things. So I was in customer service.
Yeah.
I was doing a lot of bit parts and acting, working with coaching softball, working with different artists, and I actually went to school for sound engineering and different things.
Oh, cool.
So you do what you have to do in order to survive. So the passion that I felt holding a bow and working with people with grief was one that I need to redirect and refocus, and maybe someone higher up, or maybe the universe is telling me, you know what, we're going to turn you around a little bit and let's see how you do over here.
Sure. And am I getting the story straight that Wyatt and his father, Dennis, they did archery, but you hadn't prior to that. So, I think so much of the difficulty in grief spaces, as you had defined grief, are the transition places, because they're the ones that are new. And anything that's new requires a lot of energy, no matter what it is. And a lot of stress occurs because of newness, whether it's a positive change or a negative change. It's a lot of stress. And I think that people get stuck within how to, like, where do I go? What do I do? These transitional spaces are where I think where creativity lies, because it's not of what you've been doing. And an outside force has impacted you so directly that you had to change, forced you to change and be creative with it, allowed for the creativity to change, and you allowed creativity to change you, to roll with it, to listen to your child, to develop these skills, to find this new community, and to direct and be a part of this new culture, and to help sustain and support other cultures and communities. I mean, that is like I see it in my head. Sorry if I'm just talking a little bit too long now, but I see it in my head sort of like this, like a visual line that has your life doing these things differently. And then there's this point of impact, almost like a meteorite hitting, that then
That's a good analogy.
Changes, and your landscape totally changed, and your environment and your relationships and everything has a new lens and perspective, and both eyes open and grabbing this new skill because it's, meaningful to your son. And then to see what has grown from it is like, are you shocked yourself from the impact of all this?
I really like to focus on, and I've been asked this before.
Yeah.
And I kind of take a back seat. People are always asking me, they're like, this wouldn't have come as far as it has if you hadn't believed and taken control of it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, I'm only doing what any other mother would do, and that is believe in their son and show them that if you have a dream, pursue it.
Yes.
If it happens, it's incredible. If it doesn't, you tried.
Yes.
I don't want you having regrets.
Right.
And I've had, other widows or widowers or archers or whoever say, how did you do it? And how are you doing it? Because we did make a lot of changes within a couple of years. We moved from where we where, Dennis had passed away, to 2 hours away to a brand new school so that I could start college. I had never gone to college.
Wow.
So I started college, and during college I became the grief support person, and during college I became the end of life doula. And
that's a huge deal that you reinvented yourself through this too, though.
So I don't I don't really think of, look how much I've done. I think it's more of a, look how much we've done, because we've helped each other grow. We've helped each other do this. Yeah. Wyatt has 100% belief in what I want to do and accomplish as much as I have in himself as well.
Wow.
I honestly don't look back and think, look what you've done. Because I might be overwhelmed. I might say, am I crazy?
Yeah.
Do I really still want to do this?
Right.
I just keep doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that. And I guess I've been, putting it at your feet, and you're like, no, I'm sharing this. This is Wyatt and I, this is our journey. This is our piece together.
It's our piece together, but I also have reality checks with him. So I've got a 16-year-old right now.
Yeah.
You know, another year, he's a junior. Another year, he's going to be going off to college. And I'll ask him. And we just did have that discussion a couple months ago. I'm like, there's going to come to a time where you're going to want to not disengage, but not be that public figurehead.
Yeah.
You're going to want to go off on your own.
Yeah.
Have this and have a life.
Yeah.
And I said, you can do this. You don't have to be the face. You don't have to be the talk.
Right.
And he goes, I know that. And if the time does come, I'll let you know. He goes, but right now, this is what I want to do. He goes, I can't see myself ever disengaging 100%.
Sure.
Because this is our story.
Right.
This is, where we've come.
Yeah. Well, I mean, jeepers, Dorothy, like having that allowance for flexibility and is a huge gift to share with your son and to have those dialogues, because they're so important and they're so hard. But I can see how having created this could feel like it's you have to continue this permanence, right? You're now you're the caretaker of this incorporate, what am I saying?
Incorporation.
Okay, right. And, but to have that flexibility and saying like,
well, that's why
how it works is like an accordion.
Right.
How much you want to be invested in is okay.
Right.
And it's a huge gift to give to your son and to yourself with that. And I'm so glad that you shared that, because I think those are such important, teachable moments, not just with mother and child, but with the people that we care about in our lives. And so you talking and sharing about these things is doing exactly what you wanted it to do, is to impact and help shape each other's lives through support and being seen.
We're out there publicly, so we get a lot of emails, we get a lot of messages and different things, and I've been, accused of forcing Wyatt to do this.
Wow.
And I've been accused of hating dragons, and we've been accused.
Oh man,
there's all kinds of stuff that comes out of this, being in the public forefront.
Right.
And we're very honest. We're very open. They're like, Wyatt was 13 when we did the TED Talk. How could you force your son to do that? I didn't force him. I asked him.
Right.
And when we were invited to do another TED Talk, we had to turn that down because Wyatt had enough. He said, Mom, it was really hard to do that.
Yeah.
And it took a lot of time and a lot of practice. And I just don't want to do it right now. Yeah. Maybe in a couple years.
Yep.
And I said, no problem. We won't do it.
Yeah. Great listening.
You're raising a human being. You got to let him be human. Yeah. You got to listen.
Woo.
Need a bib?
I don't think so. I don't know. Woo. Welcome back to In the Act. I'm Erica Hunsinger. We're here with Dorothy McElroy, who just, I want to reiterate what you said because I think it's so important. You got to let him be human. And I love that. And I think we forget about that sometimes because we want people to do what we want them to do. and to listen and how important it is to listen. And I tend to be a talker, and I sometimes have trouble listening to another person's experience, and I have to know when to stop and to be present with their experience and not hold on to something so that I can talk after, but to really be present and listen. And that's, it sounds like not only have you been doing that with your son at every sort of new engagement and new stage of being, but that you're really connected to the community in whatever community it is through these vehicles, and trying to be in tune with and respond to by listening and responding in a really grounded way. And that's so valuable.
We try. So every dragon shoot that we go to, so we always go to Michigan every year, and Tomahawk Archers in Temperance, Michigan. And Wyatt's always doing TV interviews there and radio interviews out there.
Wow.
And we do it not to bring attention to us, but to bring attention to the club and the community.
Yeah.
Because without them being the vehicle, we never would be able to help the people that live in their community. And it's very, very important to us. Clubs survive on members.
Yeah.
And if people don't know that they're out there and the good work that they're doing out there,
right,
they're not going to build membership, and they're not going to build community.
Right.
Archery clubs will raise money, and they will help other people. And that's our goal, is to say, hey, look at this. This is what they're doing.
Right. Please
Please come out and support them. And then you're helping someone in your community.
Yeah.
With all the deaths of COVID, with all the sickness of COVID.
Yes.
We've seen a new emergence of the old-fashioned kindness that I think started being stripped away with a lot of new technology coming out, and people just so involved with phones, and that's what I love about archery. It's no electronics. It's you, it's a bow,
mm-hmm.
and it's a target.
Yeah.
And it's not about killing something. It's about focusing, and to us, slaying a dragon, and everyone has their own dragon.
Right. That's a representation of.
It's a metaphor for whatever you're struggling with.
Yes.
And that's with every dragon shoot we have. We tell them, hold the bow for somebody who can't. Let's do this for each other.
It's really beautiful.
And, Worldwide Dragon Shooting Day became more, it's the nucleus. And we're growing, and we're emerging, and we're trying to go in different directions. So we have the Dancing Arrow Club, which is grief therapy through archery.
Love that.
We are working on, we have Dragon Slayer kits. So these are miniature versions of what we do at the range that we can go to schools with, we can go to colleges with, we can go to prisons with, and say, this is what we do, but now we have a tabletop version that we can bring to you so that you can be included and nobody is excluded. We're working on different modules and different kits to help funeral homes and to help churches about grief and death. And you had said before about space, and in doula work and end-of-life work, when you're sitting with somebody who is actively dying, you're holding space. You're accompanying them on their journey so that they're not alone.
Right.
And that's why we, impact the world one arrow at a time. We don't want people to be alone on their grief, because it is such a personalized path.
Yeah.
we may not wear the shoes that you're walking with, but we're walking down a similar contour.
Yeah.
And similar ground. Right.
And providing that community support is everything. And I think, and you said like the repetition and like that consistency of having a club, in terms of grief work, many times people who have lost a loved one, like a year later, people don't send like reminders or, it's like it's over, it's been past, this is past time, time to get on. There are all of these sort of like whatevers that are not attuned to the person's experience.
Right.
And by providing this club is providing this support system that allows for the celebrations and allows for the acceptance of different ways of living your life through these losses, and how and different creative ways to come up with things to do that, and that this is just one, and it's so fantastic. So do you guys do I know that there's an outside archery area in Sheboygan, like not far from the field house. Is that right?
Right. There's over at Kiwanis Park, there's an outdoor archery range over there.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then where do you guys practice then in town?
You can go there. We actually practice in our backyard. We'll go there's other clubs in the area. There's Whitetail Bow Hunters in Johnsonville who have, they've got an archery club there. An archery range there. And I was just giving archery lessons yesterday, and they were asking, where do we go? Because there's so many different, and I'm like, now you got to travel a little bit. I mean, there's so many around. There's Whales Tails, there's Pointet, there's Marshfield, West Allis, Racine, Kenosha, Bristol. There's so many places to go.
Cool. Which expands your community and expands your, yeah.
Right. And really what we're trying to do is expand who we are and in the community. Our long-term goal. So we would love to be able to do it in 2 years.
Yeah.
But funding is hard.
Sure.
It's going to take longer. Mm-hmm. We want to open up a 24-hour grief center that's available to everybody. And it's worked as a mentor-to-mentor program. We don't want people having to wait 3 weeks or a month to go to a grief group.
Yeah.
We want people to be able to call someone when they need you,
Yes.
You wake up at 2:00 in the morning screaming from a nightmare. You can't wait a month to talk to somebody about that. You need somebody right then.
Yep. I agree.
So our goal is to try to bring it more into the community and help people more in the community as well.
In time.
Yes.
Yeah.
I wish it were tomorrow because it's needed now.
Whew. Wow. Yeah. Agreed.
So we really are about, and it's my personal mission, and that's why I keep trying to get more education and more knowledge, and I'm actually working on, I was just accepted into a peer support certification program. So now it's just, taking classes and taking a state test and trying, these are all things that we can do to help, the community more.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. That's what it's all about.
Absolutely.
We're here to help each other. We're not here just to work our whole lives and bank all this money. That's incredible. And I wish I could do that. But we're here to help each other. What is human? What is being a human if we can't be kind and help one another?
Yeah.
It kind of sounds cliche, but it's basic. Sometimes it's a basic acknowledgement that people forget about on a daily basis.
Yeah.
When we talk to schools, I'll tell someone, you may be one person in the world, but to one person, you may be that world. And just by smiling at them one day, just by saying hi, just by opening up the door, you're making a huge impact to somebody where maybe no one else has done that for a while.
Absolutely. Yeah. that's how we can impact the lives of strangers.
Right. That's how we try to build a unity of dragon slayers.
That's how we try and build a unity of dragon slayers. I love that.
Be a dragon slayer. Yes, we love dragons, but again, be a dragon slayer, you know?
Yeah. I have a personal affinity to archery as well, so you may have stimulated me to get involved. I
Please do.
was a huge Robin Hood fan growing up. And so, and I took archery at camp and got an arrow stuck in another arrow's back one time. So I feel like I pulled a Robin Hood.
Yep, that's awesome.
And I love the act of there's a groundedness when you were talking about shooting an arrow and having both eyes open and that focus and the stance and the posture that you have to be still within this active moment of that is a real grounding.
Yeah. There's one thing, grief, loss. It takes away your confidence.
Oh, crap. I didn't even think about that.
You second guess yourself.
Sure.
You're constantly wondering, am I doing it right? How can I do this anymore? And that's one thing that archery gives you back. It gives you the confidence that you need to take that next step, whether it's an inch, whether it's a foot.
Yeah.
All it is the one motion. A lot of people, when they first try archery the first time, they're terrified of letting that arrow go. You're
Really?
pulling the bow back and you're holding it. But just the simple release of your 3 fingers to let the arrow go is very frightening because they don't know where the arrow is going to go.
Right.
It's the tension. You're releasing all this tension that you're pulling back.
Yes.
And you know what? Every arrow we let fly when we're shooting a dragon target, you're whittling away your grief, whatever it is. You're whittling away that sorrow.
Yes.
And that frustration.
Yeah.
And that process.
Yeah.
So archery gives that back to you. It gives you the confidence back. It gives you the momentum back.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Wow. I didn't even think about it as thinking about grief as losing your confidence. And that's the stability of what is known in your life as being stable and grief upending that. Yeah. Or, yeah. Mm-hmm. Loss, I guess.
Yeah. It's a huge, when somebody loses one of their parents, the other parent becomes 2 parents.
Yes.
And then you have this teeter-totter that you're riding because you want to be friends and you want to be parental.
Yeah. Right.
And it's a difficult transition to go by.
Yeah.
But you learn to be able to do it. I mean, it's chaos. And Nietzsche said one must have chaos in one's life in order to give birth to a dancing star. And that's what we try to do. We're trying to blow up dragons, but we're trying to be, do it in a brilliant way that is going to be impactful and not ceremonial per se.
Yeah. That's beautiful. That's so beautiful. If people want to get a hold of you, how can they reach you?
They can go to our website, which is www.worldwidedragonshootingday.com.
Okay.
We are, you can leave us a message there. I can give out my phone number. If you want me to give out my phone number,
that's okay.
I'm getting a no.
I mean,
they can email us at www.dsdnow@gmail.com.
Great.
We are on Facebook. We are on LinkedIn. We are on Instagram. And we are here to help.
And you have the TED Talks then too.
We have the
you can
TED
look
Talk.
Up. Okay.
We have a TED Talk on YouTube. It's Dorothy and Wyatt McElroy, One Arrow.
Great.
There's, if you also, we've done a storytelling event for USA Today magazine. That is on YouTube as well.
Wow.
Just Google that. If you Google Wyatt McElroy, you'll come up with so many different articles and interviews. And if you want to see the artwork that Dennis has done, you can look up Dennis Kauth. And that is his, you'll be able to see the different sculptures and cartography and different things that he's done. And he has a YouTube video out there as well that he did an interview back in his 40s, a long time ago.
Wow. That's
so
beautiful.
Thank you so much for letting us come in and
Thank
sharing
you so
our
much.
story. And
I feel like Wyatt's the invisible guest here. So I want to say thank you to Wyatt as well. And thank you so much, Dorothy, for sharing about it. And yeah.
Thank you for having us. I appreciate you.
In the Act is produced in the studios at Mead Public Library in Sheboygan, Wisconsin. More information on the web at meadpl.org.